years, bit more, but 2 years working in the oil industry, mainly in Libya. I was installing anti-corrosion systems to safeguard the wells that channeled gas and oil from thousands of feet beneath the ground into pipelines that eventually fed tankers waiting in the Mediterranean to transport this liquid energy around the world. Even back then, in the 70s, the technology employed in getting fossil fuels from under the earth was phenomenal. I was absolutely fascinated as a young man with the ingenuity of the engineers and technicians who kept whole countries supplied with power from this remote corner of North Africa. And I gradually got to understand how oil and gas that had lain trapped in the ground for millions of years could be located and brought to the surface, then processed and piped off sometimes thousands of miles, whilst all the time being carefully monitored and kept safe by these highly trained individuals. But, of course, the operations I was involved with were in the desert. There were no neighbours to worry about, nobody complaining about noise, about nasty chemical smells, about huge trucks arriving and leaving at every hour of the day and night. Drilling rigs are rented 24/7, and they're far too expensive to leave lying idle. And the materials, the chemicals, and whatever else is necessary to keep them turning has to be available around the clock. And so, way out there in the wilderness of the Northern Sahara, conditions were perfect. But now the government is actively encouraging fracking in the UK, and it really makes me question as to whether this little overcrowded island of ours is capable of accommodating it. I know we need the energy, but this is just the process of getting it to the surface. It's a long way from the wellhead to your central heating boiler. And what about the mixture that's pumped down the hole to get it all loosened up? From what I read, the great bonanza the US is enjoying hasn't left everybody happy. So, shouldn't the government, on the nation's behalf, err on the side of caution? After all, who's going to ensure that the water table, or the water tables, aren't contaminated? Have they got an insurance policy sorted out? I'd love to know the details. Wouldn't you? So, do you believe that fracking will reduce your energy bills? Big question. Are you worried that it will cause damage to the environment? Has the government negotiated a good enough deal for us? 1% doesn't sound very good to me, and I know a lot of local authorities are telling them to go back and get it sorted out again. They've got no brilliant record on doing deals with the private sector. Give us a call on 0845 6060 973, or text 84850, or tweet at LBC 973, or email Larry at lbc.co.uk. On the line now is James Woodhousen, Professor of Forecasting and Innovation at De Montfort University. And good morning to you, Professor Woodhousen.
Good morning, Larry.
So, sir, question from somebody who a little dipped his toes into a bit. What can the government do to put people's minds at rest? I mean, as I was saying just there, is there some sort of an insurance policy that will indemnify us so that, you know, if the water gets messed up, somebody's going to pay to get it all piped in?
Well, after the floods, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, no doubt about that. I think the bribes that have been offered local councils are not nearly good enough.
No.
And you know, do prompt suspicion. But I think what we've got to get behind is the principle that technological innovation and the kind of drilling techniques that shale has prompted is something that we support. It may not lower energy bills in the immediate term, especially as gas is subject to the vagaries of the European gas market, but we should be experimenting with proper regulation, not everywhere, not in the middle of town and stuff like that, but 90% of what you call this overcrowded island is actually not urbanized. So there's plenty of places to have a go.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of open space out there. And so how does this work? When a project like this, presumably in the same way that another big civil project would be put into operation, do they assume that they will self-assure, as it were, self-insure, or is there somebody who will be approached to see if they will actually write a policy on this?
Well, I think if anything, you know, insurance and exaggerated sensibility toward risk is the main event in society today. So I'm sure they're doing that, and then the insurance companies will drive up the premiums, you know, and all the rest of it. So I think there should be insurance against a disaster, but I think the premonition of disaster, Larry, goes a lot further than shale gas or shale oil. You know, we're always apparently, I don't buy it, on the verge of an apocalypse. So let's not get, you know, too scared about something that's caused very few worker deaths in the United States, very few class actions compared with, say, BP's Deepwater Horizon.
Yeah, that's the Gulf of Mexico thing, right?
Get upset. But I think the balance of science, such as I'm reading it, and such as your listeners need to investigate for themselves, suggests that it's much safer than coal mining in China. It's even probably safer than putting a solar panel on your roof and then falling off it.
Look, another question. I mean, to me, this is money in the bank, right? This is under the ground. It's not going to go away. We've got it. It belongs to us. Why not sit on it? I mean, it's not going to go down in price, is it? And study the safety factors in the US and elsewhere, and then, you know, maybe 5-10 years down the line, make a much more educated decision. At the moment, it seems we're kind of being hustled into it when, in actual fact, it belongs to us.
Well, I think there's something in that. You know, the government's very slow about everything, but
they're very quick off the mark with this, aren't they?
Sorry?
They're very quick off the mark with this.
Well, that's what I was just coming to. They're so bereft of an energy policy, really. They don't have one, and such as they've got it, it's a bad one. They then grasp at straws and behave in the way that you suggest. I think there is a lot of evidence to suggest that shale is safe and a very useful source of energy, but the jury's always out in science, and we do need experiments, and we do need more boreholes drilled to find out what we've got, where it is, how much it would cost, and all the rest of it. So I was one of the first people to warn about power cuts 4 or 5 years ago, actually, in Britain, and I do believe they remain a danger. At the same time, the fear of the future and alarmism about power cuts isn't the thing that should force a rush to shale in a stupid way overnight. But we need to get busy, because there is a lot of demand for energy shaping up in Britain as elsewhere, and we're closing so many power stations and being so slow about opening nuclear that, you know, an energy gap is likely, and power cuts are very possible. So in that realm, we do need to develop shale like every other energy source: nuclear, renewables, carbon capture and storage for the coal-fired and the shale-fired gas plants of the future. We need to be moving ahead on all fronts, not just doing a mad rush for shale because it's free, it's there forever, and all the rest of it.
And treat it exactly the way we treated the North Sea, which was like this great big bonanza, which was used to do whatever the government wanted to do at the moment, instead of doing what a lot of countries do and establish a sovereign wealth fund to invest in the future of the country, and in actual fact, maybe start channeling it more into renewables, which, you know, in the end we are going to have to use, right?
Well, there's something in that. I think the North Sea was a big success story. And, you know, we needn't believe that that's so easy with shale. The geological conditions in this country are more difficult than those in the States. But the point I'm trying to get across to your listeners, Larry, is that everybody needs to debate not this source of energy versus that source of energy. You know, I'm renewables, no, I'm nuclear. What we need to debate is the principle of moving ahead on all fronts with as much technological innovation and research and development as we can. You never hear this discussed. What we hear discussed is how you've got to cut back on your use of central heating, how you've got to insulate your homes, how you've got to go for wind power no matter how uneconomic it is, and it must always be renewable. And I don't think that does justice to the other sources of energy, and especially it doesn't do justice to mustering our engineers and the world's engineers to make energy cheaper, to bring about a higher productivity of labor, to make it less generating of greenhouse gases, but above all to, keep the lights on with the best tech that we can get hold of.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That was James Woodhousen there, who is a professor of innovation at De Montfort University. I really appreciate your time there, and that's got things off to a great start. So, why do you oppose fracking? Do you oppose fracking? What would help you to accept it? That's another question. What would it help you? What would make you feel better about fracking? Kevin in Erith text, fracking is going to bring short-term profit and long-term pollution. Font Oak tweets, there seems to be so much contradictory information about fracking, it's difficult to differentiate them. Help, that's what we're trying to do here. So, we're talking about fracking. What do you feel about it? Do you oppose it or are you for it? Give me a call on 0845 6060 973 or text 84850. This is me, Larry Lamb. It's LBC 97.3 and the time is 11:16. In the LBC 97.3 Travel Centre, it's Nikki Brighton.
Hi Larry, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's look at the roads first of all. One lane is closed on the M25 anti-clockwise between Junction 25, that's Enfield, and Junction 25 for Potters Bar after an accident. Very slow on camera as you approach the scene. Better news for the A30 Great South West Road in Hatton. That's now reopened heading into town between Hatton Cross and Heathrow Terminal 4. Closures continue, however, on the Bexley Road in Erith between the A206 and Park Crescent Road after an accident in the early hours of yesterday morning, causing quite a severe oil spillage to the road, which they're clearing up at the moment. In Ealing, there's been an accident on St Mary's Road near to the University of West London. Doesn't appear to be causing too many problems right now, however. In Catford, on the Catford Road, there's a lane closed between the bridge and the gyratory, also following an accident. Having a look at the underground now, part suspensions happening on the Metropolitan, Piccadilly District and Northern lines today because of planned works. The Waterloo and City line is running, however, to help with those Northern line closures. And on the trains, no Stansted Express service running today between Liverpool Street and Stansted Airport because of engineering works. Keeping London moving. Your next travel update is in half an hour.
This is LBC 97.3.
An empty property is a vulnerable property. So if you own a small business and your building is vacant out of hours, get peace of mind with Ward Security. Ward offer an affordable spot check and patrol service, ensuring your premises is safe with no signs of intrusion. They'll even unlock your building prior to staff commencing work, or carry out an internal patrol and lockdown at the end of the day. Don't compromise what's important. Talk to Ward Security right now. See wardsecuritypatrols.com.
A broken boiler, dodgy electrics, a storm-damaged roof. Fix it now with J&P. Quote radio for a half-price boiler service and up to 10 years warranty with parts and labour on selected boilers. Go to jnpplumbing.co.uk or call 020 7610 1616. Fully accredited and on-call 24 hours. J&P. Fast, affordable repairs to every part of your property.
Westminster, Shad Thames, Chelsea, Lambeth.
Find your perfect buyer or tenant with My London Home.
Covent Garden, Holborn, Pimlico, Waterloo.
Property sales, letting and management specialists in central London.
Southwark, Battersea, City, Kensington. Foxton.
My London Home, voted best single office in London and the UK at the Sunday Times Lettings Agency of the Year Awards 2012. My London Home. Passionate about property.
If you run a business that involves a lot of paperwork, your staff can spend large chunks of their day opening mail, processing documents, and endless filing. So ask yourself, how much more productive would your business be if someone else did all that for you? The Document Warehouse's off-site mailroom services can seriously reduce your costs and increase your business efficiency. Find out more at thedocumentwarehouse.com. The Document Warehouse. The paperwork people.
I was quite out of sorts before I did my tax return. When I looked in the mirror, all I would see were grey hairs. But you see, now it's done, I'm feeling good. And this silver fox is ready to purr.
You too can find inner peace. Do your tax return online by the 31st of January and avoid a £100 penalty. Visit hmrc.gov.uk and don't forget to pay what you owe.
LBC 97.3. This is London's biggest conversation with Larry Lamb.
Well, we picked a good one this morning. Everybody wants to talk about fracking, and we are. Are you getting the right information? Are we all getting the right information? Are you confident that it won't harm the environment? And do you believe, more importantly, that it will cut your energy bills? Give me a call on 0845 6060 973 or text 84850 and join the conversation. Let's have a little word with Joy in Ewell. Hello, Joy.
Hello, Larry.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And I'm dead against fracking.
Are you? And because you're out a little out of the centre of London, aren't you? So you're close to the countryside out there.
Well, yes, but you see, I can turn my tap on and drink from it.
Yeah.
Will I be able to do that? No.
Well,
what happens when the rain comes down? It seeps through the earth.
Yeah.
What's all these chemicals going to seep through into my water?
Yeah.
Now, in France, it's illegal to do fracking.
Absolutely.
But they're quite willing to come and do it in our backyard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to make a profit. It must be a profit for them to be able to do this.
Oh, there's, potentially vast amounts of money. I tell you what, something I'm gonna mention this book that I've been reading. It's absolutely fascinating, and it's written by I think he's a New York Times journalist called Gregory Zuckerman, and the book is called The Frackers, and it's absolutely not an unbiased approach on the whole thing, and it's obviously I've not had a chance to finish it yet, but it's an extraordinary account of the whole story of it and what's gone on. So the one thing you can depend on, there is an awful lot of money involved in it, I tell you. That's for sure, yeah. Joy.
Yeah, and we're one of the only countries in the world where you can turn your tap on. People don't just take water, well, they do just take water for granted in this country.
Yeah.
But it's what you can't just go, if you go on holiday abroad, you've got to buy bottled water.
Yeah, you do in certain places.
And
no doubt.
I think we're one of the only countries, aren't we? I don't know.
Well, most European countries now, you can certainly trust the water. Those days are actually
But can
gone.
you drink it?
It's absolutely, yeah.
Yeah?
I travel around. I don't know anywhere in Europe where I wouldn't drink the water anymore. No, I have to say that, for example, if you're in Madrid and you're in somebody's home in Madrid, the majority of people in Madrid will actually tend to drink, if they're going to drink water, they will drink bottled water.
But when it comes to my power bill, or my fuel bill, I don't think it's going to do anything for that.
Ah, well, this is the other question. Unfortunately, I sort of tend to agree with you. Joy, thank you so much for your call in there. That's exactly what I feel. And to me, that, for many people, is the way that they're being sold this thing. So, do you oppose fracking? What do you think it's going to do for the environment? Is it going to improve it? Is it going to really damage it? Would you mind fracking going on around the corner to you? Give us a call on 0845 6060 973 or text 84850. Let's, right now, speak to somebody who knows what he's talking about. Former oil industry executive, Ian Crane. And good morning to you, Ian. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Larry. Thanks for the invitation.
Hey, not at all. Did you hear the conversation I had earlier on with James Woodhousen?
I did, and I'm pleasantly surprised because I actually attended a debate where James was speaking on the subject about 3 months ago, and he was a lot less bullish today than he was back then, so perhaps he's actually had a look at it. And, I'm pleased to acknowledge that, he was offering a sort of word of caution in saying, we shouldn't be necessarily rushing into this.
Yeah.
When James talks about innovation, there is nothing innovative about this technology. It's been being used for the last 20 years.
Have you read this book I was talking about, Gregory Zuckerman's book, The Frackers? Have you read it?
I haven't.
Do you know when I was born in 1947, right? That's one of the times in the book he talks about when they were using it, and they were figuring it's been used before. It's just been a way they used to jolt up a well.
Yeah, but it's a totally different thing here. The only thing that's similar, and I know that you know this, is that when fracking was invented by George Mitchell in the late 1940s, and he was working with Halliburton, it was a totally different process than that which is used today. And for the first sort of 40-odd years of hydraulic fracturing, it really was just water and sand.
Yeah.
And then the oil industry said, well, hang on a second, if we start mixing a few chemicals with this, we can actually get a greater return.
Yeah, and a bit of acid and a bit of detergent, right?
Well, exactly, and over the next decade, the chemical cocktails got more and more aggressive, more and more toxic. I mean, today, we have a database of some 962 chemicals which are proven to have been used in the hydraulic fracturing process in the US. And we know, obviously, the negative impacts that these chemicals have. I mean, the evidence of contamination of water, the evidence of contamination of soil, of air, the negative health impacts are all there for people to see. And I absolutely implore people to do exactly what James encouraged them to do, which is check it out for themselves. Yeah. You will never, ever hear anybody from the industry in this country or from the government say that, because they know that when people do actually start looking at this, they're going to say, hang on a second. Hang on. If there is any risk to this nation's water supply, we need to hold back.
We're too small a country. I mean, and my other question of him was, why not sit on it? I mean, it's not going to go down in price, is it? Sit on it, do a big study internationally of what goes on. Maybe, way out in the boonies somewhere, as far away as you can get from civilization in this country. Run a couple of tests. Let's see what happens. Do some tests and sit on it.
But why? We don't need to do the tests. The tests have been done in Colorado, in Wyoming, in Oklahoma, in Texas, in Pennsylvania, and in southern Queensland. And those are the people that are imploring us in this country not to rush into this.
Yeah.
Professor Robert Oswald of Cornell University actually wrote an open letter to David Cameron because he'd done some research in the impacts of fracking on agriculture in the US. And he established beyond any doubt whatsoever that the fracking process was contaminating soil, was having impact on livestock. Farmers were losing their livelihoods because the land couldn't support the agriculture. This is a country that doesn't have the luxury of losing any of its agricultural resource. So, and we don't have the water sources. I mean, Larry, the phenomenal amounts of water that are necessary for this process. I mean, every well that is drilled and fracked in this country is going to consume 2 to 4 million gallons of water, and that water is lost to the system.
That's it.
It is not recoverable.
No.
And in the US, they're taking the water out of the Great Lakes and the Great River system. In Australia, they're taking the water out of the Great Artesian Basin. We don't have any of that.
No.
Once we lose the water from the system, we start to get into a real world of hurt. I mean, there's parts of this country that go into drought every summer. We go into hosepipe bans or car wash bans.
And they want to draw off millions and millions of gallons and pump it down a hole. Ian, I'm really grateful to you for coming on. That was former oil field executive and researcher in geopolitics and geoeconomics, Ian Crane. Thank you very much for joining the conversation, Ian. Let's quickly go to Paul in West Wickham. Paul, hello there.
Hello.
What's your feelings on it?
Well, I'd just like to say, first of all, it's a very great honour to be on the show with Ian. He's very much, professor of something that I'm a student of, basically. I've been an admirer of it for quite a while.
Wonderful. We get them on here, I tell you. They come on LBC.
Well, I think Ian as many of us are just very sort of, we're obviously committed to the cause here. It's something that we very much believe in, and that there isn't enough information out there.
Yeah.
And that's very intentional. I mean, Total have not been allowed to do this in France.
No, well, they just can't. They put the bar up to it. You're not doing it.
Yeah, and what I would say as well is, I was actually very impressed by. I didn't catch the name, the first speaker, the professor that he had on from
Woodhausen. Yeah.
Woodhausen. That's right.
James Woodhausen.
Do think about it. Professor Woodhouse, I was actually very impressed that he did at least in making his case, not try and sort of vigorously press it on the facts. I mean, there isn't a lot of science backing up his position, basically. His argument was very much, it was an argument to economics. There was a bit of scaremongering in there as well. There was a bit of sort of, half-hearted rubbishing of all the other sort of, generation techniques that are out there. And, especially when I mean, there's not the only reason for rubbishing renewable generation sources is because the fracking and the gas is, by comparison, has such a weak case. I mean, you know, I was down on the coast at Ramsgate the other week, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, they've got whole offshore raised, like, huge wind farms.
Yeah.
That are 2 or 3 miles offshore. We're going to need a lot more of those. It's certainly true. But to say, you know, oh, they're not reliable, they don't work, they're too noisy, they're blot on the landscape, just not true.
No, I agree. I agree. Thank you. I'm sorry, Paul. I'm up against the news here, man, and I really do appreciate you calling in and having your say. We're talking about fracking, and it seems a lot of people want to talk about fracking. Do you think it's going to do us any good? Is it going to cut your bills, or is it just going to wreck our environment? Give me a call on 0845 6060 973 or text 84850 and join the conversation. If you oppose fracking, give me a call and tell me why. 0845 6060 973. That's me, Larry Lamb, on LBC 97.3. The time is 11:31. The latest news headlines, here's Lisa Aziz.
The mother of 3-year-old Mikhail Kular has been charged in connection with his death. 33-year-old Rosdeep Kular will appear in court in Edinburgh tomorrow. Mikhail's body was recovered yesterday from woodland in Kirkcaldy. At least 2 men are in custody after a British man was killed on the Caribbean island of St Lucia. 62-year-old Roger Pratt from Warwickshire was attacked as he tried to defend his wife Margaret on their boat on Friday. A root and branch examination into the conduct of shamed BBC entertainer Jimmy Savile is expected to uncover hundreds of victims and reveal a culture of ignorance that protected him. The Dame Janet Smith review, due to be published later this year, has sought personal testimony from those abused by the late television presenter during half a century with the BBC. Today's Observer is suggesting up to 1,000 people could have fallen victim to Savile. And a leading head teacher says the wealthiest parents should have to pay to send their children to a top state school. Dr. Anthony Selden, the master at Wellington College, believes independent schools should also offer a quarter of their places to children from the poorest backgrounds. He's told us he believes his proposals will widen access to private education and bring new money into the state system. London's travel on the M25 anti-clockwise. There are delays now between junction 25 for Enfield and 24 for Potters Bar. That's following an accident which is on the hard shoulder. And London's weather, cloudy with some rain expected, but clearing to leave a mainly sunny afternoon. Highs of 9 Celsius. Right now at Wembley Stadium, it's 8 degrees. LBC 97.3, it's 11:33.
LBC 97.3.
My wedding day was the most amazing day of my life. The venue, the vows, and my gorgeous husband. But I think the thing that really made it on the day was seeing Mum and Dad together for the first time. They'd recently just been divorced, you see, so it was just lovely. So any tears on the day were happy ones.
At the Cooperative Legal Services, we know that when you're going through a divorce, you want to reach a resolution fast. It's why we make everything straightforward, with expert advice and fixed fees. We're here to help for a range of legal needs. Find us online, the Cooperative Legal Services, here for you for life. Authorised and regulated by the Solicitors Regulation Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
I just saved £20 on this jumper.
Ha! I saved £400 on a new boiler from British Gas that'll keep us both warm.
The Great British Gas Boiler Sale is now on. There's £400 off boilers, you could spread the cost with monthly payments, plus you could be eligible for up to £270 Green Deal government cashback. Sale ends 31st of March. Call 0800 754 754 or visit britishgas.co.uk. Conditions apply. Finance subject to status. Look after your world with British Gas.
A safe business is a business your customers can trust. Next week, LBC 97.3 presents a special report on cybercrime in partnership with cyberstreetwise.com. We'll investigate the impact it can have on your company and how protecting your business can boost reputation and growth. Find out more at cyberstreetwise.com and listen to LBC 97.3 all next week.
If your teeth stop you from smiling or enjoying your food, false teeth aren't necessarily the answer. Dental implants look and work exactly the same as real teeth, and at TDC implant centres, a whole mouth can be restored in just one day. This means you avoid the wait and much of the discomfort associated with traditional implants. So to eat what you want and laugh when you want, call TDC Implant Centres on 0800 012 2086 or see smileinaday.co.uk.
LBC 97.3. Call 0845 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC 973. This is London's biggest conversation with Larry Lamb.
Fracking's in the news. The government's really behind it, but do you support fracking? And how do you feel it will benefit Britain? Should we maybe be a bit more wary? Give me a call on 0845 6060 973 or text 84850 and join the conversation. Let's go to Whitstable and say hello to Julie. Hello, Julie.
Hi there, Larry.
How's things?
Fine, absolutely fine, and I really thank you for having this discussion this morning.
You're very welcome. So what have you got to say on the topic, Julie?
Well, you know, I'm part of a group down here called East Kent Against Fracking, and we successfully fought off applications from a company that wanted to exploratory drill down here. But, you know, recently a Whitstable resident as well was arrested for a fracking protest up at Barton Moss in Salford, where Ian Crane has actually been recently. And what she said when she was arrested was, you know, when your kids ask what you did to secure their future, you want to be able to look at them and say you did everything you could.
Yeah.
But we've got David Cameron. I think that's an admirable sentiment. But David Cameron, on the other hand, has recently described opponents to fracking as irrational. And he claims that those who support the protest are not being helpful.
No.
Well, you know what, Larry? I think, is it rational for Cameron to expect that bribes that he's offering, you know, payments of £100,000 and 1% of possible revenues if shale gas is found, could properly compensate communities for what they will suffer, which is reduced property prices, for instance, increased costs of insurance, mortgages, noise and light pollution, water and air contamination, as you've discussed, and like the wholesale industrialisation of our countryside. What I think Cameron may find helpful, perhaps, is to ask why no less than there are 70 campaign groups now in the UK to fight this industry that he's so keen to promote. That's telling, Larry. And far from being irrational, I think there are increasing numbers of campaigners who've really examined the evidence and they've found it lacking.
And, of course, these groups, these campaign groups, they cut across all social strata, don't they? This is not...
yeah, absolutely.
Not a bunch of full-time protesters who rock up wherever there is one.
Yeah, I mean, you've got ex-industry personnel like Ian Crane, who's incredibly well-informed. We've got respected geophysicists.
We've got Alistair Scott coming on, Professor of Environmental Space Planning at Birmingham City University, going to speak in a second as well.
Fantastic. And these are just, you know, among those who agree that this industry is neither truthful and not transparent either. You know, with regard to the use of chemicals, you don't have to look much further than the Advertising Standards Authority ruling that a claim from one company who were down in Sussex said that their fracturing fluid did not contain hazardous or toxic components. But that breached their code for misleading advertising and substantiation.
Yeah.
You know, the government keeps parroting this Institute of Directors statement that fracking could produce 70,000 jobs. But this is discredited. The FT recently published a report with new AMEC figures that showed only 15,000 to 24,000 would be created at peak construction. So, for me, you know, what is indisputable, you'll hear, as he said, contradictory information and evidence. But what is indisputable here is that Lancashire is the only place in the UK that has experienced slick water hydraulic fracturing, and that resulted in earthquakes that caused damage to 80 properties.
And we don't want that elsewhere, do we? Julie, I've got to go on, darling. Thank you so much for getting on and having your say. I really appreciate that. We're talking about fracking. If you've been listening for the last few minutes, you'll find there's an awful lot of people want to talk about fracking. It's on a lot of people's minds. So, what would help you to accept it? Do you accept it? Do you think it's going to cut your energy bills? Give us a call on 0845 6060 973 or text 84850. And now let's speak to Professor Alistair Scott, who works in environmental and space planning at Birmingham City University. Thank you very much for coming on and speaking to us, Professor Scott.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning to you. I'm hoping that you heard James Woodhousen and Ian Crane speaking earlier, if you had the chance.
Yes, I have, yes.
And so, how did what they have to say take you?
Yeah, well, I think there's several points. Firstly, I totally agree that we currently don't have a coherent energy policy, and that creates a kind of a state of flux. I think the other major point that comes out is that it's not really up to the public to find out about the strength for or against fracking. In my view, if a government is going to be making good policy, what it should be doing is going out, getting evidence from each side of the argument, as it were, presenting that evidence in the public domain, assessing it, and making transparent decisions. My starting point is I'm neither for or against it. I'm somebody that actually would like to have access to the evidence both ways and then be able to make an informed decision. And I think for the public generally, not the public that talk about an environmental catastrophe or those that support it, accusing people, as the lady just said, of any opposition being irrational. I don't want those two extremes. I would like the government to be doing what the government should be doing in the policy kind of making process. Go through the evidence. At the moment, the way the government are acting, they're acting as an arm of the industry. And that, with the issue of trust being uppermost in the political debate at the moment, that worries me and makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. And if I was a supporter of fracking, I would actually be wanting exactly the same thing happening. Because I mean, that's the immediate response to that. And I think the other point I'd make is that there are sort of safeguards here, and something that hasn't occurred in the fracking debate so far is the Aarhus Convention is something our government signed up to, which actually requires the public to have information and consultation over policy changes that impact on the environment. And what we seem to be having is a government trying to relax the regulations. The EU quite rightly wanted to have extra regulations looking at the implications of fracking across the EU. The government here resisted it, and it just begs the question why.
Yeah, but this seems to be the way they do it, isn't it? They tend to go along with the force of the major industrial interests, unfortunately, and especially when you hear that what they're talking about is a 1% royalty on whatever comes out of the ground. I mean, and with their record of deal making with the private sector, I smell a rat right there. But I like you, I feel exactly the same. The more information I can get, the better. But I don't want the information on the end of a gun.
No. And that's also worrying, because when local authorities are cash-strapped,
exactly,
the messages from government send a political sort of shockwave, so that then the pressure of elected members, the councillors that make decisions on planning, are going to be very strong to support it. And I think that sort of front loads a debate. And the worrying bit from a planning legal side is that opposition to particular planning applications cannot use the argument against the case for fracking. Fracking, as a strategic case, is not a valid planning issue. You can only deal with the issues related to the development in that particular location. So by not having that wider debate about fracking in the public domain, as it were, as a strategic energy policy option, that argument at the moment has just disappeared. And the government, I think, have been quite clever there, because in a sense it makes the planning debate much easier to win, because most of the opposition, quite rightly, will raise some of the concerns that are there, and they're more strategic, and they do not necessarily have a place except in the specifics of that application.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And that was Alistair Scott, Professor in Environmental and Space Planning at Birmingham City University, coming in on the debate. And we are talking about fracking. Those of you that really support it, please give us a call, 0845 6060 973, or text 84850. I'd like to hear your opinions on why you feel that this is something we need to do and something we need to do right away, and that you back the government wanting to push it forward. 0845 6060 973 is the number to call, or text 84850 and join the conversation. So that's me, Larry Lamb, on LBC 97.3. The time is 11:45. In the LBC 97.3 Travel Centre is Nikki Brighton.
Hi Larry, thanks very much. Well, on the roads, let's start with those. Traffic now moving well on the M25 anti-clockwise between Junction 25 Enfield and Junction 24 Potters Bar after an accident earlier. However, there's now problems clockwise from Junction 9 Leatherhead to the Wisley interchange at Junction 10. One lane's closed there for some emergency repairs to fix a drain cover. Just having a look at Carrow at the moment. Vivian Avenue in Hendon, that's partially blocked after an accident on the A41 Hendon Way just by Hendon Central Station. Looking on camera, there's a white sports car facing the wrong way in lane 3 at the traffic lights. We will keep you updated as we get more information through on that. Still seeing closures on the Bexley Road in Erith between the A206 and Park Crescent Road after an accident in the early hours of yesterday morning. And in Ealing, that accident that happened earlier on along St Mary's Road just by the University of West London, that's now been cleared. Mill Road and the High Street in Cobham and Windsor Road in Egham, they're still closed following recent flooding. However, now on the underground, part suspensions happening on the Metropolitan, Piccadilly and District and Northern lines because of planned works. And on the trains, no Stansted Express service running today between Liverpool Street and Stansted Airport because of engineering works as well. Keeping London moving. Your next travel update is in half an hour.
This is LBC 97.3.
At Back 2, we've been advising customers on back-related problems for over 25 years. Based in the heart of London, our showroom offers over 400 products that could relieve your back pain. We source products from all over the world, such as office chairs, sit-stand desks, beds, mattresses, orthopedic pillows, home chairs, children's furniture, and much more. Come and see us for free advice at Back 2. Open every day in Wigmore Street and online at back2.co.uk. Get back to living with Back 2.
I was thinking, since it's the new year, maybe we should get a new car.
Maybe.
Maybe one of those Toyota hybrids.
Whoa, a hybrid? Might be a new year, but it's not 2056.
Sorry?
Well, they're cars of the future, aren't they? Those hybrid high-tech moon buggies.
Hardly. They've sold millions of them now, and they're easy to drive.
But they're all a bit space-agey.
Actually, Toyota has 6 different models, and they look great, and they cost less than you think.
Do they?
Yeah, they've got all these offers on too.
Oh, really? That doesn't sound very intergalactic.
Try a Toyota hybrid today at your local dealer. You might be surprised.
The bigger your company gets, the less personal everything seems. It's just business, nothing personal, as they say. But why? Why shouldn't business be more personal? After all, success means being successful with people. So if your accountants no longer provide the time and dedication you deserve, try something a little more personal. Try Barnes Rofe and experience the difference. Visit barnesrofe.com/radio. They really are clever accountants for business.
Good evening, please. Welcome to Marouche. It's nice to eat proper, authentic Lebanese food. You can tell that they've gone to a lot of effort to cook it for you.
I really enjoyed the different variety and flavours.
I like to try a bit of everything, and I love being here, surrounded by all of the ingredients. It's kind of an amazing experience.
It's amazing. It's really incredible food.
Cheers to Marouche for putting on a lovely evening for us all.
Discover the surprising Lebanese taste experience for yourself. Marouche, fine Lebanese dining throughout London.
LBC 97.3. This is London's biggest conversation with Larry Lamb.
Next week, LBC 97.3 brings you a special report on cybercrime with cyberstreetwise.com. We'll investigate the impact it can have on your company and get some great tips on how you can protect yours. Listen to LBC 97.3 next week to find out more. In the coming hour, we're going to be talking about mental health, about the way sufferers are underserved, and I'm going to be talking to a young man who's trying to locate someone who talked him out of taking his own life. So, give me a call on 0845 6060 973 or text 84850 to join that conversation. Right now, we're going to continue the debate on fracking, and plenty of people are on the line and sending texts and tweets. Let's say hello to Morris in Wimbledon. Hello, Morris.
Hi, morning, Larry.
Good morning to you.
Larry, I'm phoning basically to try to inject a little rational thought into this whole debate, somewhat like your last caller just before the break.
Okay.
And unlike perhaps the two ladies, one of which successfully fought something off.
Yeah.
I think the first thing we have to start with is the UK has had an oil and gas industry for many, many years.
Yep.
It's highly controlled, highly regulated. As someone who's drilled a well in southern England relatively recently and has done hydraulic fracturing in the Netherlands, you don't just roll up and do this without considerable thought. In terms of the chemicals which are injected, they have changed radically. And a lot of people, and I think the previous lady was alluding to chemicals in her water supply, and a lot of this seems to come from the States and from particularly that film Gasland, a lot of which was proved later not to be true. What they do in the States...
from what I gather, a lot of that has existed for years and years anyway. You know, this was gas that was coming out of the water supply long before they started to frack.
Exactly, it was biogenic gas.
Exactly.
It was gas from that.
It's methane, isn't it?
It's effectively methane.
Yeah.
But, so, first of all, let's remove the States from this equation. The things they do in the States, and you only have to look at some of those previous programs, like that Big Dog Rig one, where they were using chains to wrap pipes, something which is outlawed in Europe and the rest of the world for years.
Yeah.
They use a totally different attitude to what we do. Every chemical you inject has to be told to the Department of Energy.
Okay.
They know what you're doing.
You've got to account for everything here, have you?
Sorry?
You've got to account for everything you inject, yeah?
Everything. And in particular now, with fracking, that you have a complete list. There were some comments earlier about some of the service companies not wanting to release their chemical mixes because they're proprietary. That was in the States, not in the UK. Also, a lot of these chemicals are very small. They're also injected at very large depths. You don't go... Neither oil and gas companies, and the environmental industry does not let you go and frack a well right next to a water supply. The height of aquifers, etc., is all taken into account where you do it. Using the other comment which the lady said about earthquakes in Blackpool, which she was referring to Quadrilla, and when they drilled, they were not earthquakes, they were seismic events. I think they registered 2.2. They were the similar things that you get otherwise. These weren't earthquakes which took down houses. Can you imagine the amount of energy required that you'd have to inject into the earth
to cause an earthquake?
To cause a huge earthquake.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. The last one on France. The reason why France has, at the moment, banned fracking is because they've gone nuclear.
Yeah.
They also have a huge agricultural lobby. And as such, they don't want to. Why would they bother upsetting them when they've gone on down the nuclear pathway?
Well, it may be as well interfering with it, because the big difference between the United States and here in terms of the ownership of it is that all the mineral rights belong to whoever leases the land or owns the land in America, whereas here it belongs to the Crown, right? And it may well be in France that in actual fact, I don't know what the situation with the ownership of the mineral rights in France is. Do you happen to know that?
The state owns the mineral rights.
There you go.
France.
So it's the same as here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right, that is one of the tremendous differences. In the States, they're almost set formulas. I mean, you have people who are farmers on what was pretty much useless land, who are being offered $100,000 for a 1-year option to drill.
Yeah.
So
plus a share of the take.
Plus a standard share of the take.
Yeah.
So there's a huge incentive, shall we say, for people to do things. And also the States has very different regulations per state, which is one reason why when we ever deal with things, use North American technology, we tend to use Canadian technology, where Alberta has some of the strictest regulations in Canada and America. It's a gold standard.
And not only that, everybody that lives in Alberta gets a royalty check from the production of oil and gas in their province, don't they?
Absolutely.
Every
and
year.
They have a very big incentive to make sure the industry works properly.
Yeah.
So that's a state that it's not Britain. Now, in terms of disruption, when we're talking about gas, first of all, remember that gas is piped. So yes, there is, of course, disruption when you drill a well. But an average well in this sort of area would take about 30 to 45 days. So yes, there would be a period of time when you're drilling from these pads when you're going to have quite a few trucks. You're probably going to have the usual traffic problems and issues with that. But I would say is that much difference to if you were building, for instance, a new set of office blocks or something like that?
Well,
but once that's done, I don't know if you've seen Humbly Grove down in the south of England, which is or Witch Farm.
Yeah, down in Dorset, isn't it?
Down in Dorset.
Yeah.
You can't see Witch Farm.
No.
You can't see Humbly Grove. You have to go down a small little driveway and turn a corner, and it's all hidden away.
To get to it. Look, Morris, I really appreciate your call because I very definitely wanted somebody, because everything that's coming in is all negative, and I wanted somebody to put the point that from the positive, from the pro fracking side, and I think you've done it admirably, and I really appreciate your time. So let's get moving on because we're coming to the end of the hour. Let's go to Rita in Knockholt in Kent, another lady from Kent. Hello, Rita.
Hello, Larry. Very good programme.
Thank you.
I'm quite interested from the point of view of your previous gentleman, Morris. Everything presented very well, very plausibly. I'm in fact a retired doctor, and there has to be a very long length of time for testing and safety insurance on any drug before it is introduced, in case there are remote, unexpected side effects. I do not feel that the timescale that we're looking at is giving an opportunity for this sort of safety measure to be taken into consideration.
No, I just feel that it's all a bit hasty. I think the thing to do is sit on it and see how, and do a study on everything that's going on in fracking wherever you can get information, and just don't go rushing into it.
Just a fridge magnet I have. We do not own this earth. Walk gently upon it, that future generations may do the same.
Absolutely, Rita. I couldn't agree with you more. And as far as I'm concerned, whatever money, if we do go ahead and do it, whatever money, we should be setting up a sovereign wealth fund to invest in the future of this country and start working on renewables. But that's my opinion. Dan's in Wimbledon. Hello, Dan. Looks like you'll be the last call on this hour. So what's your feelings on it, Dan?
Hi there, Larry. Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that I think it's an inconvenient truth for a lot of environmentalists out there that fracking has done and will do more to reduce carbon footprint than probably all of the other efforts like recycling that are put together. I'm not trying to poo-poo recycling, as far from it. I think it's a great initiative, but I'm just saying.
What about renewables?
What about renewables?
Yeah.
Renewables is fine, but I don't. But I think that's a separate point.
Yeah.
The point is that fracking and natural shale gas has led to the lowest carbon footprint in the US for 20 years.
Yeah.
And that's due to the use of natural gas. And I work in technology, and it always makes me laugh how scared people get about new technology, which is effectively what has allowed fracking. And I think that people just need to be open-minded and recognise that this could be a very revolutionary thing for us and allow technology to be able to create a new ability to get this natural shale gas and reduce the carbon footprint through an alternative method.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Thank you for putting that point. Pro-fracking there, Dan from Wimbledon. This has been an extraordinary one. Lots of texts and tweets and emails coming in here, and I'm just not going to have time to read because coming up, I want to talk about mental health and specifically our attitudes towards the people